Hey, what is going on everybody, and welcome to Fantasia, home of the Melodious. My name's Azallea, and today, gonna be bringing you guys another update to my Melodious deck. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So starting off, we are of course playing with the most amazing Melodious monster in the archetype, 2 copies of Aria the Melodious Diva. Now Aria has that protection effect that we all know and love, but she becomes much more consistent now that Ostinato has been imported into the TCG. So 2 copies of Aria is fantastic. You know, sometimes you draw into 1 copy, but you have another copy in your deck that you can still send with Ostinato for that reason. So that's why I play 2 copies. 3 copies is a little too much because she doesn't have an effect other than her targeting protection, but she only gains that if she's special summoned. So the next card that we're playing is of course going to be the playmaker for the deck, 3 copies of Soprano the Melodious Songstress. Now Soprano, of course, the special summon effect is fantastic, allows you to recover your Melodious monsters from the graveyard, allows you to go for so many unique link plays where you can, you know, add back a Sonata, add back a cannon, special summon them out, and then go for extended fields. But you can also just use the Melodious monsters you add back as discard fodder for things like your Nightmare Link monsters, which are very generic and act as little toolbox options for you to get rid of your opponent's board. So that's why I really love having 3 copies of Soprano. She is just one of the core pieces of the deck. The next card we have is, of course, her partner in crime, Cannon the Melodious Diva. We're playing 3 copies of her. Even though she can only be special summoned once per turn using her own effect, it's completely fine because you just want more options for you to go ahead and swarm the field to either go for more damage or just to go for link plays, which is, of course, very important. You can also, you know, put Cannon onto the board to act as another body so that Soprano can go for fusion plays. Now the last Melodious monster we're playing in multiples is 3 copies of Sonata the Melodious Diva. Now Sonata has just been getting better and better as more Link monsters get released because she doesn't have Cannon's restriction of you can only special summon her once per turn, so you can just continuously special summon her out if you have more copies of her, and if Soprano adds her back, then heck yeah, you can go for even more special summons and go for more link plays. So that's why I really love Sonata, and that's why I run 3 copies of her, because it's okay to see multiples of her. Alright, so for some of the other Melodious monsters that we play, these are all just one-ofs as little techs. I play 1 copy of Score, the Melodious Diva. She's really just here to act as something that my Soprano can add back to help me attack over larger monsters that my opponent has on their field. I have 1 copy of Elegy, the Melodious Diva. This is really just because Ostinato allows Elegy to become more viable. I still don't really like her. The Aria Elegy lock is really overrated and it's not that good, but having Elegy as an option is pretty decent because I'm running Transmodify, and I'll show you my other target in just a bit. Now the other card that I'm running is 1 copy of Chopina, the Melodious Maestra. Maestra has become a lot more viable now because of the fact that we have Ostinato, so you can send the Maestra straight from your deck to the graveyard and then special summon your Bloom Prima, and then Bloom Prima can either go for the OTK, or if you're going first, she can help you set up a pretty decent first turn board. So that's why I run these 3 as one-ofs. You don't really want to draw into them except for the Score. The other 2 are just there to send off of Ostinato. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that I had, you know, multiple targets for Transmodify. Of course, one of them was Elegy. You can Transmodify a level 4 into Elegy, but you can also Transmodify your level 7s, whether it be Chopina or your Bloom Prima, which is a level 7 fusion monster in your extra deck, and you can go ahead and summon one of my favorite cards in the game, Archlord Christia. So Christia is such an amazing floodgate, even in this day and age, in 2018. If you summon a Christia, most of the time it's pretty much going to be game, especially if you're against a really combo-oriented deck like Gokis or things like that. They really don't have that many outs to a Christia just sitting on the board. So having 1 copy of her just as a little tech is fantastic. You can also have a really great manipulation of the graveyard now that Ostinato is here. So even if you draw into a copy of Christia, you can always set up so you have enough fairies in your graveyard so that you can special summon her from your hand. So 1 copy of her, I've tested it. It works fantastic and it's so good. Okay, so next off we're playing a few hand traps. We're only playing 2 different kinds, but there's 6 in total, so we're playing 3 copies of Effect Veiler, and now I love Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is just so good because of the fact that it doesn't have that once per turn clause that a lot of other hand traps have, such as Ghost Organ, Snow Rabbit, or Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which we're also playing 3 copies of right here. Now, 3 copies of Effect Veiler and 3 copies of Ash Blossom, they're really good for just stopping your opponent's plays, negating effects, especially since Isolde is becoming more and more of a mainstay staple in extra decks, and so many different combos, even outside of Goki's, right? So many different archetypes are coming out that can manipulate Isolde and, you know, the Armageddon Knight malicious plays, that Effect Veiler becomes really good at stopping those plays. And of course, Ash Blossom is just a really good, generic, all-around hand trap, and just fantastic to have. Alright, so that does it for the monsters. Let's go on into the spell cards. So starting off with the spell cards, we were playing, yes, finally got imported 3 copies of Ostinato. Now, Ostinato is such a powerful fusion spell card, but the restriction is that you can't control any monsters, so you just hope that you draw into it in your opening turn. But Ostinato opens up so many different plays for the deck, and it really just replaces First Movement Solo, so I don't play any copies of those because they have the same exact activation requirement, and if you draw into both of them, well, you're obviously playing the Ostinato, so First Movement Solo becomes a dead draw, and I'm trying to mitigate the chances of drawing into cards that are just potentially dead. Okay, so the next card that I play is 3 copies of Transmodify. I mentioned this earlier. You can use this to summon out your Elegy. You can use this to summon out your Chopina. You can even use this to summon out your Archlord Christia from your main deck. Just way, way too good. And honestly, it catches a lot of people off guard. So 3 copies of Transmodify is fantastic. Of course, you can also use the backup play of summon a Sonata and then Transmodify her into Soprano and go for your quick Link summon, Link 2 summon, or your fusion play. So Transmodify is just an overall fantastic combo piece for the deck, and there's so many different cards you can combo it with that it just becomes really versatile, and you can use it in almost any situation. Alright, so the next card I have is 3 copies of Pot of Desires. Now I know some of you guys out there just really hate Desires, you don't want to play it, and that's understandable, but Melodious don't have any searching capabilities, and I'll get to that in a bit when I go to the trap cards, but Melodious don't have any searching, so we lack a lot of consistency, and the only way we can actually see cards is by using draw power, and because things like, of course, Pot of Greed, too strong to be unbanned, that's not legal for play. Pot of Desires does basically the same thing, but you banish 10 cards on top of your deck, and it's fine even though we're running a lot of one-ofs because you wouldn't have seen those cards anyway. And it's actually good if you do banish one-ofs off of Pot of Desires, like your Chopina and stuff like that. You know, if you didn't open them up with Ostinato, you're probably not wanting to draw into that Chopina anyway, so if you banish it off the Desires, that's fantastic. It just helps you see more cards so you have more things to use to try to out your opponent's board and swing for game. That's really all Pot of Desires is here for, and honestly, if you're playing Melodious, trying to stall out the game and stuff is probably not in your best interest, especially with so many cards like Ningirsu, Borreload, all these really accessible Link monsters that can out your Arian Elegy lock. So don't rely on that lock, don't play slowly, use that Pot of Desires, draw into more combo pieces, and go off. So that's the reason why I play 3 of these, and obviously, you know, if you have Ostinato and stuff, you play that first, and so you lower the chances of banishing anything that's really, really important from your deck. All the important cards we play in like 2 or 3 ofs. Alright, so speaking of cards that we play in 2s or 3 ofs, well, we're going to go into the spell cards we play 2 of. So we are starting off with 2 copies of Scapegoat. Now, Scapegoat is just one of those cards that's fantastic. During your opponent's end phase, you flip it over, get 4 tokens, and you can use all 4 of those tokens to go for various Link plays and just overwhelm your opponent's board. You know, Nightmares can pick apart your opponent's board. You can go for so many different types of Link monsters like Borreloads and things like that. You have things like Link Spider and Link Karibo that can help you get to those higher Link monsters like Borreload that require effect monsters. So Scapegoat's just a very versatile card, and it gives Melodious that power play to help you come back when you're kind of behind in terms of card advantage, which happens pretty often because Melodious, you know, don't really have the best of archetypal support. Okay, and then the other card that I run is 2 copies of Called by the Grave. Now, Called by the Grave is very, very crucial to run, especially because Ash Blossom is so popular. Ostinato can get stopped by Ash Blossom, so you want to have that Called by the Grave to stop that Ash Blossom from stopping your Ostinato. Ostinato is one of the key plays in this deck, and you really, really don't want it to get negated. So that's why it's here, and also, you know, if you've already gone through combo plays, your opponent didn't really have anything to stop you with, you can always set your Called by the Grave and basically use as another form of negation on your opponent's turn, banishing something important from their graveyard, you know, helping Shiberta out, you know, pretty much doing the same thing she does, except it also negates the card that banishes. Alright, so now next off we have some one-ofs for our spell cards, and all of these are just forms of revival. So we have one copy of Soul Charge for that mass revival, bringing back entire boards, bringing back those link monsters. Maybe you use nightmares to link climb into higher things. You can bring those back with Soul Charge, and then offer your co-linked monsters, protection from battle or by card effects. It's a really, really powerful card. We have one copy of Monster Reborn, obviously, because it's such a good card of Melodious. We get all of our effects from being special summoned, especially Aria, Elegy, and Soprano, so you want to have access to that. And then we play one copy of World Legacy Succession. Now this card is really good because the fact that we can easily link summon in this deck. We have things like Hippo Shinigin, and we'll get to that when we get to the extra deck, but you have so many ways of just getting at least one empty link marker onto your side of the field. They can just bring something back from the graveyard, and it's really nice because there are some niche situations where, you use a Nightmare, you discard some monsters, maybe you drew into your Christia, and you're like, ugh, this is dead in my hand, so I'm gonna, summon Cerberus, summon Phoenix, pitch that from my hand, it's in the graveyard now, but boom, now I can go ahead and use World Legacy Succession and bring back that Christia to my side of the field after I've established all my special summons, and now you just have an unbreakable board, right? So it becomes really, really good when you think about that in the context of the rest of your deck. Okay, and to kind of wrap up the main deck, we have 3 more cards, and these are trap cards in the deck, and I only play one type, and it's just Mistake. 3 copies of Mistake, and it is such a powerful floodgate. Stopping your opponent from searching is really, really crucial, especially because, well, we don't search that much ourselves. And Mistake also takes the burden off of Ash Blossom, so instead of stopping your opponent's search, like let's say they summon a Sold, and they're trying to go for that search for a warrior, you can flip that Mistake, you save your Ash Blossom, and your Ash Blossom can be used to negate things like Allure of Darkness, or like these other draw cards, your opponent's Pod Desires, things like that, and you just have your opponent on complete lockdown while you slowly build up advantage on your board and then swing for a lot of damage. Pure Melodious is really just a beatdown deck in an archetype. Alright, so that does it for the main deck. Next off, we're going to go into the extra deck. Okay guys, so for the extra deck, starting off, we are playing a few monsters that we need in order to use Scapegoat effectively in the deck. So we're playing one copy of Link Karibo. Now Link Karibo is a recurring monster. You can always bring it back from the graveyard if you have an extra Scapegoat token on your side of the field, which actually does come up from time to time, and just that battle negation is actually really important because sometimes, you have a few monsters that are really low attack, and that Link Karibo just offers you that one more additional layer of protection. We're also playing one copy of Link Spider. Now, Link Spider, we don't really play any other normal monsters in the deck, so Link Spider is only really here to take up your extra monster zone, gives you a down arrow, lets you actually build your nightmares off of it, which is really nice. Then you have co-links with your nightmares when you use their effects, and you can actually go for additional draws. So that's why I really like having 2 of these, Link Karibo and Link Spider, but they're also both effect monsters, so they help you climb into your higher Link monsters that you can't use your tokens for. So that's why they're really important, and I really, really love them. Now, the next card we have is Reproducus, and Reproducus is one of those cards that just facilitates so many nasty plays, especially because of the fact that it allows you to go into your Summon Sorceress. Now, this deck doesn't really synergize too well with Summon Sorceress, but there are some plays with your Scapegoat tokens when you have 4 tokens, right? You'll summon, your Link Spider and then your Reproducus using 2 tokens under the Link Spider. You can change the Link Spider into a dinosaur type, so you can use your Link Spider and Reproducus into your Summon Sorceress. And then if you have any other Melodious monster in your hand, namely Soprano, you can normal summon your Soprano to the Link marker that your Summon Sorceress points to, use her effect, special summon Cannon or Sonata out from your deck, go for your fusion play, and then with that last token you have, you can summon that Link Karibo to your side of the field. So that is actually one of the combos in this deck that you could fall back on. It doesn't really come up too often, but it is really powerful. It gives you Summon Sorceress, a Shiberta, and Link Karibo onto your side of the field for really just one Scapegoat. And, of course, one Melodious monster in your hand. But, yeah, this is these 3 Link monsters are really fantastic in combination with the Scapegoat. So next off, we have, of course, our toolboxing from this deck. So we have one copy of Hippo Shinigin. You don't really need more than one. If you really wanted to have the ability to summon another one, you could just put this back from the graveyard back to the extra deck when it gets destroyed by battle by card effect. That doesn't really happen. It does enable a lot of good OTKs though, because it gives your Bloom Prima 500 additional attack, and because she can attack twice, that's 1,000 extra damage, which is actually quite significant in some cases when your opponent has really weak monsters on their field or has an open board, right? And of course, next we're playing the Nightmare Toolbox. So 1 copy of Cerberus, 1 copy of Phoenix, and 1 copy of Unicorn. Finally got the Unicorn. This card, oh my god. After you use like Cerberus or Phoenix to pop something, you can just link into a Unicorn and then just shuffle something else from the field back into the deck, all the while getting additional draws because these monsters are co-linked. These are just fantastic Toolbox cards, and of course, highly recommend play them because otherwise you're relying on things like XYZs for the same effects, and they're just not as consistent in this link-based format. Okay, and now for the higher link monsters that we play in this deck. There's 4 of them, starting off with the infamous Summon Sorceress, allowing you to toolbox so many things out from your deck, especially your Melodious monsters. I just, gave you an example of how I would utilize Summon Sorceress in the deck by, using Soprano, getting another Melodious monster out from your deck to your side of the field, and then fusion summoning with them away into your Shiberta or what have you. Now, Summon Sorceress doesn't have a level restriction, so you can summon something like a Shiberta, you can summon something like Christia out, and it's all fine. Now, the effects are going to be negated, but let's say you do have something like a World Legacy Succession. You can summon out your Christia and link with your Fairy and your Christia into like a Link 2 or whatever, and then use your World Legacy Succession and bring back that Christia from the graveyard. It's just a really nice way to kind of toolbox what you need from the deck onto your side of the field, or at least into circulation for play. Okay, so next card that we play is a 1 copy of Topologic Trisbana. And now Trisbana is such a good card because I don't play, spell and trap removal in my main deck. You could always potentially side deck that, or if you don't like Desires or you don't like Mistake or something, you can replace it with things like Twin Twisters if you want. But Trisbana is such a good card in the extra deck because 1 Scapegoat can easily make this card. It's a Link 3, so something like a Link Spider and a Reproductus, which is a Link 2, can make this, and then with your last token, you summon a Link Karibo into the zone that Trisbana points to, and then you just banish all spell and trap cards on the field. So if your opponent's playing a very back row oriented deck, you can use this card and just clear out everything before you start going and attacking. So you just have more safer plays. That's one thing that Scapegoat can do, is open up the board so that you have a much more safer initiation for all your combos. And then, of course, the last 2 cards that we play are going to be 1 copy of Saryuja Skulldread and 1 copy of Borreload Dragon. Saryuja, of course, is here because Scapegoat allows you to just go for your Saryuja as long as you have another monster in your hand that you can summon. And Saryuja just lets you draw 4, put 3 back. Fantastic. Allows you to special summon Melodious monsters from your hand. So if you have a Soprano, special summon it, add back a Sonata or a Cannon from your graveyard, special summon that. Go for links, go for, your fusion plays or what have you. It's such a good card for this deck, and I really love it. And Borreload Dragon, of course, is just for your opponent's Borreload Dragon, because if you summon Arya, the Melodious Diva, people are going to be very tempted to make Borreload to steal it. So you can Borreload their Borreload and then use their Borreload to steal back your Arya or something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But it's here if you ever need it. Alright, so that does it for the high link monsters. I don't really know. Anyway, next off, we're going to go into the fusion monsters. So we're only playing 4 of these, 2 copies of Shiberta, the Melodious Maestra. Shiberta, of course, banish stuff from your opponent's graveyard. Fantastic against things like Gokis, fantastic against things like zombies. It's just a really versatile card, and a really powerful beat stick as well. Next, we're playing 1 copy of Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. We are playing Ostinato, of course. You're playing Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. And of course, we're also playing Bloom Prima, the Melodious Choir. Now, Bloom Diva actually gets summoned way, way less than Bloom Prima does, because Bloom Prima enables so much damage, so much potential OTKs, especially coupled with Score. Score and Bloom Prima together can just wreak havoc on your opponent. Now, Bloom Diva is just here as a toolbox option. In all the testing duels that I've done, I've probably only summoned her 1 time, so that's something to keep in mind. If you are to cut something from your extra deck, she's probably one of the first things that you could consider, although I wouldn't cut her entirely. Just having her here as a toolbox option is really good. But yeah, that does it for the extra deck, and that does it for this deck profile, guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please leave a like, subscribe for more Melodious content, and leave a comment down below letting me know what I can do to improve. And until next time, take care.